Hello and welcome to the Child Psych Podcast. My name is Tammy.
And I'm Tania.
And we are moms, we are registered psychologists, and we are co-founders of the Institute of Child Psychology. And today we are going to talk about basically playing with your kids based on a model that we've developed called therapeutic play, as Tania and I are registered play therapists. And Tania's going to take the lead today on this particular podcast, but I know it's a topic that's near and dear to our heart because of our clinical background and how we treat children who are struggling emotionally is we use play therapy. So Tan and I have taken a lot of those skills, and then we look at some of those skills and how do we adapt them to playing with our kids.
Yeah, and Tam, I think starting off there is essential. I think so often we think that play therapy is something that only happens in the play therapy room. This is where children can work with a professional, and that professional can identify themes and code their play. And even though that happens, and even though there is such an important place in the world for play therapy, there is so much that parents can do at home to develop children's cognitive skills, to develop their developmental milestones, and to help them with nurturing all sorts of things like confidence, social skills, self-esteem.
Absolutely. And I think we've said this on previous podcasts. We've done one on the power of play, and we did one with Lisa Dion on play therapy, that play is really a child's language. And so we want to come into their world if we want to understand them. Like kids can speak to us, they can communicate, but it's not how they're processing their world. It's not how they're integrating information. And so I think it's really important we come alongside where they are in their brain development. And that is when we've got kids under 10, that is primarily through play. And play can have, there's so many types of play, but I think that's the biggest thing is we want to promote, that really healthy brain development and emotional literacy and all kinds of things. And play is really a great avenue for that.
Absolutely. And, the research, there's stacks and stacks and stacks of research. And Tammy and I on March 7th will be releasing our book, The Parenting Handbook, where we cite all of the research. But the research is mounting that shows that play is one of the best vehicles for really promoting healthy neurological growth in a child and healthy psychological wellness.
Yeah, and I really feel very strongly, like when we wrote our book, we looked at some of the reasons why kids are struggling so much and what parents can do, obviously, to promote resiliency and that psychological growth and cognitive growth, like all of these pieces. And we think that play deprivation is a huge part of why kids struggle so much, is we're so busy putting our kids in organized activities and they're on screens and we're flitting from this to this to this to give them the upper hand, like speaking another language or, how many sports teams are they in, how many accolades can they get. We forgot the fundamental way in which Mother Nature designed them to get an edge, to get ahead, to be resilient, to be adaptive. And that's actually through play. And we're selectively cutting it out, like gets put on the back burner. And of course, kids start to struggle when they don't have an outlet for, these struggles, this adversity, or just every day to day, I think milestones that can be really hard for our kids, whether it's rejection or they're learning a new skill and it's hard, or having to do something that's scary. We always say that it's learned first through play and then it's done in real life. So it's really the dress rehearsal for life. And if we take away the dress rehearsal, of course you put them on stage and they freeze because they don't know what to do. They've never been able to practice those skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we look at it from a bigger perspective, how does a child one day when they're grown up ever learn how to take a risk in a boardroom if they've never taken a risk on the monkey bars, if they've never taken the risk of walking up to another child on the playground and saying, will you play with me? That's highly, highly vulnerable. So all of those little skills that we take for granted that happen when our children are naturally on the playground are skills that are built and built and built over time. And they happen first through play. Kim John Payne is one of our mentors at the Institute of Child Psychology. And he always says that play deprivation is a core part of what he calls the undeclared war on childhood.
Yeah. And we really encourage you to read his book, Simplicity Parenting, where he talks more about this. His work was so aligned. And we have a podcast actually that us interviewing Kim Payne. But moving forward with this particular podcast episode, Tan, I guess parents who are listening are going to say, well, okay, so what do I do? Like, what am I supposed to do? If I'm supposed to promote play, do I just like leave them with their toys? You know, they come to me, they're bored, they want their screen. What do I do?
Hmm. Well, I think for so many parents, Tam, when they hear you have to play with your child, and we have parents who are exhausted from a number of different reasons, whether it's work or having to juggle all of the kids, when you now hear, in order for your child's wellness, you need to play with them, the thought of probably getting down on the floor and playing Barbie with your kid or race cars or whatever it might be probably sounds absolutely exhausting to many parents. So I also want to make space for that for many parents, the thought of play is exhausting and often extremely overwhelming.
Yeah. And so with that, I would say this isn't something you have to do every single day. That's not what we're saying, because kids are designed to play on their own. Let me be clear. Like they are, if we let them be bored long enough and we take away the screens and we take away all the organized activities, they naturally move towards play. So we're not saying you have to get down and play with your kids every day. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we're saying. But we are saying once in a while it is a really good idea.
Yeah. And, for those of you who are interested, we often cite Dr. Michaeline Ducliffe, who has wonderful, wonderful work on how play as we know it in kind of more Western cultures looks very, very different in our traditional cultures. And there often children are just a part of what's happening in the family, and they're included in family chores, all of the things that the family's doing throughout the day. The parents don't actively play with the kids, but what happens is that the kids will be involved in what the family's doing for a little while, and then, as Tammy's saying, they often will naturally start to then become involved in their own play. So they'll be involved in whatever it might be, helping look after the babies, and then we'll see that the kids will start to play by themselves on the side, and that's where play tends to happen more in more of our traditional cultures.
Yeah, and I think for me, I was thinking about this literally last night. I'm on a farm, and last night, my son, who's 7, helps me do chores every night. We feed all our animals. So he comes out, and about half the time he can pay attention and stay on focus. But a lot of time, what happens is he's doing the things with me, and then he's playing with the dog, and then he's climbing something, and then he's grabbing a pool noodle in the barn and throwing it around and pretending to do a sword fight. So yes, like he's coming and he's helping, but play naturally just unfolds when we're outdoors. You know, I'm telling him to stay on task, but I also know that he's 7 and his attention span is pretty short. So I'm just happy he's moving and he's outdoors. But that's part of it, is seeing like he is playing when he is, wrestling with my dog or running ahead, and seeing how high he can climb. That is play, but also in copying what I'm doing. And we're feeding the goats, for instance, we're taking some oats in a bucket to put them away. That is considered parallel play. So when
Mm-hmm.
they're play alongside of you and copy what you're doing would be parallel play. So it's actually a type of play when kids mimic what adults are doing, even in their work, like their household chores. So it actually is a type of play. And
Mm-hmm.
so any of you are
Yeah.
like, yes, doing chores with the kids is play. I'm like, if you do it with them, telling them to go do the chores is not the same thing. You have to do it
Totally.
with them.
Yeah. And I mean, there's all sorts of connections. So often I say that play is what we're looking for in play is connection and joy. And there's different types of play. So we want to make space for that type of parallel play that you just described there, Tammy. And then we also want to, particularly with our little ones, make space for play where the focus is on child directed play, where we're joining them in their play. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about today.
Okay. You go ahead. Let's
Yeah.
launch in.
So the very first thing that we want to do is, before we even begin, is we want to reflect a little bit on our own play history. So what happened in our own homes when it came to play? Did your parents play with you? Was there lots of imaginative play? Was there more structured play? What is your first play memory? Who were your parents to you during play? Because all of those questions will influence how you play with your own child now. So reflection is absolutely key for when you're sitting down with your kid and going, okay, what's happening in this play? What happened in my own background first?
Yeah. What was play like in your home? Because I know my mom would do imaginative play with us, and my dad was more of like a roughhouser, and we would do like activities like swim or go snowmobiling or horseback riding. So it was more like outdoors kind of piece, which is why I'm like that now too. I'm always outdoors and with animals, because that's how play existed in my in my home.
Mm-hmm. So in my home, and it differs between my husband and I. So in my home, it was very, very structured. My mom did lots of arts and crafts with us, lots of board games. And it's interesting, even now clinically, I often have to be very aware if I'm becoming too structured when I'm in the play therapy
Mhm.
room, because that's what I know. That's my go-to. Whereas with my husband, he's similar to you, lots of outdoor sports. So that's his natural play.
Yeah,
So
outdoor time. Yeah.
mhm. So I think it's important to recognize the play that you gravitate towards, and then at times to push yourself a little bit to lean into discomfort and go, okay, so this is not what I naturally do. What happens if I just lean in a little bit and do a little bit of imaginative play? Or if I truly let my child lead, what does that look like? And then if I have any barriers towards play, where is that coming from? What is that about?
Yeah, I know a lot of parents I've worked with just say, like, I never played as a child, so I don't know how to make the voices. I feel silly doing these things. So uh, we can talk about letting your child take the lead and some ways to that they help you facilitate play.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
kids really will tell you what to do if you give them the
Absolutely.
chance.
Hmm. That's my husband. He'll often say to me, I have no idea what to do with them when they want to do their tea party with me. And I just say to him, get down on the floor with them and just wait. They'll show you what to do. They'll show you. But there's kind of a panic. He's way more into the rough and tumble play. So owning what you love to do, but then also again pushing yourself into areas that you normally wouldn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our first one is we really want to know where we're coming from in terms of play before jumping in. The second one is really looking at your play room or your play area and asking yourself, do the toys and the way that I've set up the toys and the area in which my children play lend to deep play or not?
Yeah, because with our play, if there are too many broken toys, there's toys scattered everywhere. It's just a bomb has gone off in the playroom. Kids won't engage in deep play because they get so distracted by what's going on. And if the toys are broken or lit up, there's just the attention span is shortened quite a bit. Or maybe when we have certain toys that lend to very specific stories that exist within like a fairy tale or a TV show, that child doesn't make up their own narrative, like they don't make up their own story with it. So having like these really neutral toys is helpful, just like very plain toys that kids can, and animals and things like that kids can kind of create their own stories about them.
Beautiful. Yeah, there was actually this really fascinating study that looked at little kids. And what they did is they gave one group of kids 4 to 6 toys, and they gave another group of kids 16 toys each to play with. And then they watched to see what happened with the kids' play. And what they found was with the kids who had fewer toys, 4 to 6 toys, is that their play went much deeper. The kids who had many toys tended to stay in what we call the exploration phase of play. So they would kind of look at each toy, turn it around, see if they could turn it on, see if it beeped, and then they would move on to the next toy. So there's 2 phases to play. There's the exploration phase and then there's the play phase. And those kiddos primarily stayed in the exploration phase. So there were no deep narratives, no real play happened. Whereas the kids who had fewer toys, their play went much, much deeper. So I think
Yeah.
that that's what I always say to parents is less is better when it comes to toys.
Yeah. And if you don't want to clean up your playroom, you're like, I don't have time, my playroom's disaster. Have your child just grab a handful of toys, their favorite toys, and go to another room and play with them. That is just a really simple way if you just don't want to do that. Another thing that Kim Payne talks about in his book, Simplicity Parenting, is you don't have to get rid of all the toys, but put some in storage and then just
Mhm.
bring them out. We cycle through them is another way that and I used to do that probably more regularly than I do now. But when my kids were very young, that's what I did.
Mhm.
Put lots of them under the stairs in containers and then would just bring some out.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I find getting outside too. So I know my girls had a mud kitchen that we built for them, and then really just some old bowls and plates and measuring cups. So if I can get outside with them, it eliminates all other toys or things that we may have in the house, which can be really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is we really want to look at the play area and go, what is going to help with this deep play? The next thing that I always say to parents is figure out how long you have to play. Because I know for myself as a busy mum, that sometimes when play goes on and on and on, it kind of loses that deep connection piece. I start thinking about cooking dinner. I need to take the load of laundry out. And so I find it helpful to set a timer and say, okay, we're going to be playing for 30 minutes today. Let the kiddo know we've got about half an hour to play together. I'll let you know when there's 5 minutes left, and then making sure that we actually hold the limit at the end of that play time and having a bridging activity. So let's go get a snack together. Let's go have a hot chocolate together, whatever it might be, having some sort of bridging activity. And then just saying, this is our special playtime. We have half an hour together today. I'm so excited to see what we're going to do today.
Yeah. And what Tan just said there was, I'm excited to see what we're going to do, because we're going to put the onus on the child. They get to decide. And that can be hard, and you won't always be able to do this. I know my son 2 days ago really wanted to build Lego, and I wasn't feeling well, and I was like, this is not going to happen. Like, I do not have the, this withwithal, stand with all to do this. I don't have the energy to do this. So it to me was like, I know you want to play Lego, and we can in a few days, but today I'm not feeling well. So if you would like, we can pick a board game to play. And that particular day, we had to do that, just because I knew I couldn't bring the energy needed to that space. And sometimes you just have to ask yourself, do you have it in you to do this kind of play? And if you don't, I would say spend time doing something else then.
Totally. And children are so perceptive. They know when you're coming in completely empty and not wanting to be there. So I think that's a really great point, is we're not always going to be able to do it, but as much as possible, coming in feeling full and not empty.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that we have this time, and we said to your kiddo, this is our special time, and you get to choose what we do. Then what does the parent do?
So what I love to do as much as possible is get down on their level. So my girls are still kind of small. So get down on their level, look at where they're looking. They're going to choose whatever it might be to play, whether it's the silk scarves, whether it's characters, whether it's the measuring cups that I was just speaking about, and the spoons. Getting down. I like to stand next to them so that we're both looking. So there's kind of a joint mutual gaze on what they're playing with. So I stand next to them and I just wait. I make sure that my body's open, that I'm calm, that my facial expression is matching theirs. And I just wait to see what they're going to do next. Sometimes they're hesitant. They're not sure where the play is going to go. And as much as possible, I keep quiet. I just make sure that my breathing is matching theirs, and I wait. And eventually they will start to do something, whether it's digging in the soil if we're outside, or whether it's playing with little characters or dolls if we're inside, whatever it might be. And then I'm next to them down on the floor, and I just look at what they're doing. And then I start to go. So if they go, wee, and they take the little doll up, 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 and then they bring the doll down crashing on the floor, sometimes I'll just copy exactly what they're doing. So I'll go, oh, look at that. It's going up, 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 up. And it's coming down. So we're just mirroring what they're doing in this moment. They haven't asked me to play with them yet. I'm simply mirroring what they do. So sometimes I'm just repeating what they say. Sometimes I'm talking about what the character is actually doing, but I'm not interjecting at all or developing the narrative until they invite me to.
Yeah. So one of the things that's a skill we've learned in play therapy is, and in layman's terms, we call that sports casting, where you are repeating back words that your child is saying, or we call that tracking their behavior. So if a character is going fast, we would say, oh, that one's running so fast, or that one is climbing so high. And you'll hear us say that one, because we don't actually label what something is until a child does. So that's just a habit Tania and I have formed when we play with our kids. Until they say she, he, cat, dog, we don't. It's just that one, the big one, the small one. And so that's something you can do, is just like, what are they doing physically with their body? What are the toys doing? And we would just reflect that back in the movement, how fast, things are moving, what direction they're moving. And then what words what is your child saying? So it's kind of like we paraphrase back some of the things that they say.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why we don't label is we have no idea that spoon might be a spoon, or that spoon might be a space rocket. So the moment we label, we're putting our own projections onto the play. So there's immense beauty in trying to stay with not labeling. And it can feel really awkward for parents at first. Keep with it. Don't give up. Sometimes you kind of are going to ask, but how much do I do it? How much do I repeat what they're saying? How much do I say, oh, that one's going up, that one's coming down? My biggest piece of advice is just start doing it, because after a while, the awkwardness will pass and it will become more natural. But you have to push through the awkwardness to get to that space where it's more natural.
Okay. And if you're not sure like your child is, you're doing the tracking and you're reflecting back. And then your child looks at you like, well, what are you going to do? Like, can you play with me? Like, so you're doing this. So sometimes it's easier just to sports cast, honestly, than it is to actually join the play. And then you're looking at your child being like, I have no idea what to do. Like, I'm not comfortable with this. Like, what do I do? So my go-to when I first started doing therapy, my supervisor, Ken Gardner, told me to do this, was use a whisper technique. What should I do next? What should she say or what should they say? It's just, and whispering kind of takes it out of the context of the play, saying like, I'm bringing myself out for a second. You take the lead and you show me what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
usually when we use a whisper technique with kids, they will take the lead again. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm the boss. And that's the lovely thing about playing with kids in this way, is it is a way for them to naturally take authority with, they don't have authority or control in most areas of their life. So I think that is part of that, a really healthy autonomy that a lot of kids are lacking in their life, that they get through being the director of their play.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And just a note here that when a child says, so let's say they've started playing with the characters and we're sports casting with them, when a child invites you into the play and says, you be the monster, we're no longer sports casting at this point. So when
Yeah.
they've invited you to play with them, now we're 100% following their lead, using that whisper technique. And this is where we have to be very careful, because as adults, we tend to take control without realizing it. So then we'll go, oh, the monster's coming over here and is going to crash into the castle. That is not the direction the child's play was necessarily going. So hold yourself back. And again, we're just trying to let this child take as much lead as possible, because that is where the depth of play lies. That's where the skills are built, when the child takes the lead.
Yeah, so your child might say the monster's mean, or maybe he's a really nice monster. So we automatically jump to it's a monster. It must be bad. So again, if you're really confused, just ask your child a couple questions, being like, if you're not sure what to do, is so you can gather as much direction from your child as possible as to the quality of this particular person or animal or monster's temperament, and are they good, are they bad. Like, your kids will give you natural direction, saying he's mean, or I don't like him, or he hurts the, whatever it is. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
monster, or I'm scared of that one, then be
Mm-hmm.
scary. But waiting for that child to give you some inclination as to the character, it can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I'd mentioned this earlier, but this is where it becomes really important once we've joined in that play, is we want to sit as much as possible side by side with our child and watch the characters together. So we're not sitting opposite our child staring at them. We're next to them, fully immersed in the play. Our voices are the same resonance or tone as their voice. Facial expressions are very similar. We're completely immersed in what's happening with that play.
And this is why parents can only often do this for 15 minutes, like 15, 30 minutes. I would say most parents can't do this for more than an hour. And if you can, that's very impressive, because it's very difficult to stay present with our fleeting attention spans thanks to our screens. It is very hard to be present for that
Mm-hmm.
long time. So give yourself some grace there, that it's very difficult not to check your phone. And you shouldn't, and that's the thing, is we have to put our phones away. We have other kids are away. We're not competing with maybe like laundry or anything like that in that
Mm-hmm.
moment. It's supposed to be 100% presence when we do this kind of play.
Beautiful. And then the last one that I want to talk about in the play is that the setting of limits can really help a child to regulate through play. So we don't want to have too many rules, but there are things that we may need to come in and go, you're so excited to play with that Play-Doh, but the Play-Doh is not for the carpet. Let's put the Play-Doh on the table. So there might be spaces that we need to put in those limits that our children really need. Ending the playtime when we said we were going to end it, giving them those 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and now playtime is over, is also important. And it helps play to become a safe container for that child.
Yeah, and Gary Landreth, his model is CPRT, child parent relationship therapy. Yeah, CPRT. He uses, we use this model. I think it's in our book as well,
Mm-hmm.
ACT, which is acknowledge the feeling, communicate the limit, target alternative. So, for instance, if your 2-year old takes the marker and starts drawing on the wall, you might say, you're so happy drawing. I can see that. But we may not draw on the wall. You can draw on the whiteboard, or you can draw on the paper. So you're giving them two different choices rather than drawing on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So as we come to the end of that playtime, we give them the time warning, different for different kids. So I know my little girl, Una, she becomes more dysregulated as she's given 10 minutes, 5 minutes at the end of the playtime, because she says that I'm invading her playtime and making her stressed that it's about to end. So she likes me to just end it. So different kids. But I always find it helpful to have, like I said, a flow activity after. It's something that we're going to do together afterwards to transition them out of that playtime together. And remember, like Tammy and I had said, play is a child's language. So I want you to remember that lots has been happening for that child. I find it very helpful to almost have a little bit of a downtime after play. So that doesn't mean turning on the screens. It might just mean reading, some time alone, each of you are doing your own thing. But again, recognizing that lots of internal processes have happened for that child.
Yeah. I also want to, I have a boy at home, and this comes up a lot with moms of boys. So I just really want to say how important this is. When our kids are struggling with impulse control, morality, like is something good or is something bad? Sometimes if they're struggling academically or with failure in their life somewhere, it is really common to see aggressive play from your kids. Sometimes things die, sometimes things get their head cut off, sometimes there's a toy gun. There's all of these things that come up for our kids. And I really, really would encourage you to sit with your discomfort there and allow the play to happen. It's not a time to lecture your child about gun safety. It is not a time to lecture your child about, we use our words, not our hands, unless your child is actually hurting you. If the characters are fighting, let them fight. We assure you that the more you allow your child to have these themes of aggression in the play, of death in the play, victimization in the play, they're actually less likely to engage in these behaviors in real life. It's play, and it's just how they are expressing certain hardships in their life that they don't know how to express any other way. And that can be really hard for some parents who are very hyper vigilant about, like I said, sometimes it's guns or violence. But our kids have aggressive impulses. They have these, sometimes they don't understand if their anger is okay or not. And they've had a death in the family or they've lost a pet. So of course they're going to recreate these scenes, maybe something they saw on TV within the play to help them understand it. So in those moments, it's just to breathe. You can set a limit. So when I would play with my kids, whether it's my kids or the kids in therapy, I always had rules that if they want to battle with me, that's fine, as long as the sword only goes from like the neck down, for instance. Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to like hit me in the face. And honestly, most kids were really good with that. Like, but there are times where I would get like tied up or handcuffed or things, they chop my head off or I lose a limb. And parents would always get so worried about this. And I said, no, it's really important because I know this kiddo is really struggling with feeling competent or impulse control, or they've lost someone important. So these are just themes that come up, and they all mean something. But just for parents to relax, it doesn't mean your child's a sociopath, we promise.
Mm-hmm. What a
it
beautiful note.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And as we talk about themes, for some parents, it can be helpful. And I've done this clinically with parents whose kids are in play therapy with me. As I say, play with them at home. Like you said, it doesn't have to be an hour, 15 minutes. It's beautiful. But afterwards, if you have time, journal what themes came up. So was there a lot of aggression? What toys were they playing with? It doesn't have to be a long journal, just a few little notes. And then each time you have these special play sessions with them, journal again what came up in that play session for that child. Because what's incredible is you will start to see a pattern over time. And that pattern is often indicative of what's going on in that child's world.
Yeah, and that is important because it is a language, and we know it can be coded. Helen Benedict has done some great work in that area. So you don't have to code it, but just know that if a theme keeps coming up repetitively with your child, they're working through something really critical, and we have to make lots of space for that. And you don't need to fix it. You just need to, again, stay with them, play along with them, track what's going on. And the one piece we missed here, I just want to highlight too, is I'm thinking of our model here, and we have a whole model in our book on therapy. It's called Therapeutic Play. I forget which chapter it is, but we have like a beautiful diagram. Is to also to really acknowledge the character's feelings and your child's feelings in the play.
Mm.
Like even if it doesn't have to be like feelings they're struggling with. It can be even if they're excited to play with you, if they're proud of themselves, if a character looks angry or they're sad, or it is acknowledging and reflecting that feeling, even of the characters, which might seem strange, but when the characters are going through something emotional, that's actually a projection of your child's emotions in some context or someone else in their life. So really you're acknowledging their emotional experience when you acknowledge the toy's emotional
Mm,
experience. So really, so we're not only sports casting, we're also acknowledging the toy's feelings and your child's feelings,
beautiful.
including the positive ones, even when they're proud or happy or excited, all of the feelings.
Beautiful. Fantastic. And then a note to all the parents and all the caregivers out there: our children will only continue to play, and play changes and morphs over time. Our children will only continue to play if they are seeing their village play. So as adults, we need to keep playing. Play looks different. So Dr. Stuart Brown has done beautiful work on the 8 different adult play personalities. And they include things like the collectors, people who collect things, the adventurer, people who try different restaurants, go to different countries, the person that hosts parties, the joker. So play looks different over time, but our children will only engage in joy infused activities if they see their village doing the same. So I think that that's probably where I would like to end off, is I hope that we've given you some ideas on how to play with your child, but importantly, you need to be playing too. Find your play.
Yeah. And I'll end knowing there's a link in our bio. If you want to see Tanya and I do this kind of play and you're like, I need to see it, like, because some people are, we can talk about it all day long, but you want to see what this looks like. We have a course on therapeutic play. I think it's a long one. I think
It's long.
it's 9 hours. It's
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 beautiful.
a lot of content. So it's our book also has a chapter on how to do this on the parenting handbook that's coming out March 7th. But you also can take our course, and I think it's a very appropriate course for professionals as well, who are looking to maybe dabble their feet into how to connect with kids in a therapeutic sense, without necessarily doing play therapy, but just having some of those skills to really immerse yourself in that child's world. So we'll include a link to that in the podcast episode description if you're interested.
Beautiful. Thank you.